The biggest challenge facing men undoubtedly is consumption. When I say consumption, I'm talking about three key things: food, information, and other people's energy. The consumption of these three things in the amount that is happening right now is the greatest downfall of men in this modern day.
Welcome to the Well Worship Man podcast, where men come to build unshakable presence, become the rock in their relationships, and build a legacy that lasts beyond their years. Here, we explore the path to mature masculinity through humble power, daily devotion, and unwavering integrity.
Thanks, baby. Before we dive in today, make sure you leave the show a rating, a review. If you're watching on YouTube, press subscribe for more conversations like these. Today, we have a special guest. We have Donovan Owens. He is a father of four, a grandfather of five, married to his queen with a single obsession of reviving the mastery of masculinity. Donovan retired at 47 after owning a fitness business for 20 years, quickly followed by voluntarily becoming homeless, selling everything, deleting all his social media accounts, and hitting the road. Thousands of miles on the road allowed him to receive his next assignment from God, building a peaceful rebellion against society's secret system of traps that are seducing men into becoming weak, fat, lost, and distracted. This peaceful rebellion is called Life is Reps. Reps stands for Repetitive Excellence Produces Success and is for growth-minded men who choose to build connected power within their mind, money, muscle, mastery, and masculinity. Welcome, Donovan.
I'm happy to be here. Appreciate you.
Yeah, happy to have you on. Um, in what I've learned about you already, there was something that really stopped me in my tracks, and something that you share, that two things, mastery and masculinity, are actually unachievable. And I know I'm not the only guy that would stop in the tracks, especially when we've been conditioned to achieve, achieve, achieve. And those two things, mastery and masculinity, sound like great things to get after. So tell us why those things aren't actually achievable.
Okay. They're not achievable because they're energies. Okay. So I'll start there. A lot of men, including myself in my early years in the, you know, after becoming a man, being 18 and realizing that drive, ambition, focus, discipline, all these things were going to be important in certain areas of my life. I was, just like you said, I was set on achieving, achieving, achieving. And what it led to was this loop of suffering in my life. And I'm all about intentional discomfort and struggle, like intentional struggle. I think it's necessary for a man to create that in his life every day. Suffering is something completely different. And so what I realized was, in my quest to achieve and acquire, there was a missing piece in my mindset. And the mindset was that I wanted to be as masterful as I could be. I wanted to be a master. Right? There's a lot of ego and pride attached to that in my early life, because if I'm a master, then, obviously I'm seen a certain way. If I'm super masculine, if I'm as masculine as I can be, then I'm seen a certain way. And so that was this outward, external validation that I was looking for. What I realized through creating this my own lifestyle operating system over the last 15 years is that those are very unachievable things. And instead, what happens is a man can make a choice through who he's being to connect to the energy of mastery and masculinity daily. And that requires a daily commitment of showing up in a certain way and being very intentional in how a man shows up every day. Just like you setting the intention before we got on this podcast with the breath work and the little prayer, like that is tapping into the energy of what we want this to be right now. So that's a very different way of looking at uh, those two things. And when you look at it that way, what I found through myself and coaching hundreds of other men, when you look at it that way, it challenges you to be the man who can have the capacity to take on mastery and masculinity. It's earned, it's not given. So that's why mastery and masculinity are unachievable. And let me give you a little bit more context. Michael Jordan, arguably one of the best basketball players of all time, right? He was a master at basketball. That's how a lot of people look at it. Well, if you look at Michael Jordan today, I can confidently tell you that he is no longer a master at basketball. A lot of people will argue with that and be like, what are you talking about? This is Michael Jordan. Well, I don't know all the nuances of his life, but just stay with me. When he was playing basketball, he made a conscious, deliberate, and intentional choice every day to who he could be. See the difference? Master, he was masterful because he made a decision to tap into the energy of mastery. Now, my guess is that he probably doesn't wake up with that same intention every day because life's a little different now that he's retired and playing golf and doing other things, right? So this is why he would not be considered in this world that I'm building a master at basketball, or he's not as masterful at basketball anymore. So that's the long answer to understanding the simple concept. If you want to choose to be and operate masterfully and be as masculine as possible, then it's a choice every day to wake up and tap into those energies that are not achievable.
Yeah, I love the way that you're describing this because what feels in my feminine form, what feels kind of scary to me is like when anyone really, any human, but for the sake of this conversation, like a masculine human reaches complacency and they start telling this story like I'm it. I've done it. Like I've accomplished it. I'm the master. I'm the example of XYZ. And there tends to be then, this complacency that leads to lack of choice every day to show up in this way where they are fine-tuning the mastery of being in this human form, being in connection to spirit, expressing their masculinity in whatever way. So, you're describing it actually in a similar way of like how people in relational work will describe like how do you allow a relationship to last and be nourishing and successful. And it's like, well, it's a choice every day, like choosing your partner. It's not love. It's like a choice every day to be in love, to express love. And so, yeah, the way you're describing this is a choice every day to show up in that form. And regardless of really what you're feeling, you can tap into that essence of, harnessing mastery, harnessing the masculinity. And another aspect of this that I like is you can also choose when it's not necessarily the time to engage with that energy so intensely. Like if someone is super attached to being the man of the house or the man in the room, we talk about this a lot because we're in this program right now of like teaching people to tap into their emotional states better so that they can use the wisdom from them. But in our culture, where men don't have the I don't know, the teaching the same or the I'm losing the word, but like the gift that women have of like, oh, women get to be emotional, but that has programming around it for men. But when you're teaching masculinity as an energy, there's not so much of a hit to your persona when you have an emotional process that maybe would happen if someone says like in the physical form, I'm the man, I'm the masculine. It's just like, oh, I'm just tapping into a different energy right now. There's a little bit more leeway.
Yeah, I love how you're explaining that. It really it takes the pressure off of trying to be something that you're not actually, your identity is not actually allowing you to attract. Like you're really working hard to be a certain way, and it almost can come off has a lot of pressure and fake. There's a lot of performance involved. And so if we can release that pressure and take the performance out of it, instead you get to focus on just a choice of the man or woman that you choose to be, and then ask the question, what does it look like to take aligned action with that? And most of the time, us in this growth space, or any man or woman who chooses to be in a space of growth, there's going to be this desire to tap into the energy of mastery and masculinity for men anyway, because it's required. It's required. And if it's not there, then again, that leads to that suffering loop.
Yeah. Yeah, as you were speaking about achievement and why those two things are not to be achieved, but to be tapped into daily, what I felt was this fixation that so many men have on their reputation of how other people see them, right? And so, how did you, or how do you help the men that you work with loosen the grip of reputation of how other people see me so that they can actually choose who they're here to be or tap into who God wants them to be?
Man, powerful question. The answer to that is the first of the 7 mindsets of masculine mastery, which is part of the system. The first one is radical responsibility. And so anytime I'm having a conversation with a man, the first thing I'm listening for is the words that he's using, to identify the level of responsibility that this man takes for his life. And this is something I had to do for myself in the very beginning. So I was the guinea pig, right? I was the first one in line to take this on. And what I found is, with radical responsibility, what it says is that 100% ownership is the minimum. There's nothing below that. And so I say all that to say, once I can get a man to understand that, then we get to work crafting what I call an intentional identity. And an intentional identity will allow a man to focus on who he is being, and also unravel the person that he's been being because of maybe the way he was brought up, the things his mom or dad said to him, the things he heard from the pastor at church, society's rules that are pressing down on his desire to be someone different. So we go through the work that's required to unravel some of those things, at least bring awareness to them, and then start to line out what is the identity required to achieve this vision, right? Because vivid vision is another part of this. What is the identity required to achieve this vivid vision that you are ready to take radical responsibility for? So those two things combined, radical responsibility and an intentional identity, start to shift a man's life dramatically.
When you are sharing about, creating the vision, creating the identity that actually can bring that vision to form, I'm curious about that process because in our culture and in masculinity culture specifically, but also just all of American culture, there's this idea that like working more is going to get you there every
Mm,
single time. And we talk about, and you talk about, and we've talked a little bit about together that, our missions are God given. And so there is this balance between like letting God lead us and also being responsible for like taking the actions that we are directed to take.
sure.
But there does seem to be required unwinding from this belief of like more is always going to get me there. If I just work harder, if I just spend more time in the
Mm.
office, if I just XYZ, then I'll be the man, then I'll have these things, then I'll X whatever.
Yeah, a strong topic because we are in a culture of performance. And, with this social media world that we live in, and always on, and this fire hose of information that's being just it's getting bigger every day. It's easy to get caught up in this performance. I call it a performance paradox, where you feel like the more you do, the further you'll get, and you wake up the next day and you realize, man, that didn't really work. Let me try harder. Let me just do more of that and add some other stuff, and we just start to repeat. So what this leads to for a lot of men, and I experienced this in my own life about 20 years ago, was it leads to what I call success on paper, right? Where everything just looks great on the outside. It's well manicured. But if I were to sit down and have a conversation with my former self, or a lot of men now, and ask a question of can you tell me everything that's going on here, right? In the heart. Well, what's going on? It's a completely different image than what's being portrayed externally. So success on paper is sometimes a good start for people. But once you get caught up in it, what happens is you get 20 years down the line and you realize I've been living somebody else's life. And so the mission becomes to go from success on paper to success on purpose. In order to do that, there has to be intentional identity. There has to be a vivid vision that you own. And then there has to be aligned actions that you take every day that magnetize that vision closer to your life. And all those turn into being. They turn into the way a man is being. And in that being, that's where you start to really feel what the power and the energy of mastery and masculinity are. And so that's the connection between all of these things. It's one interconnected system. They're not individual pieces, right? A lot of men look at them as individual pieces. And then what happens is they try to say, oh, I'm going to work on this piece. And then they're like, all right, I got this piece. I'm going to go work on this piece. And all of a sudden this piece is dropping down. And they're like, oh, I got to go back and work on this piece. And it's this right here. Like the relationship with the wife is going down. Oh, I'm not making as much money as I was. Let me go make some money. Oh, now my relationship is not very good. Harmonious action is so important. And that's where, when you start to take these, like the radical responsibility, you can start to bring these things together and realize there's nobody to perform for. There's only a man to be, and you get to own your entire system. You get to own the way you do everything. Even if you're working for other people, even if you're in a relationship, you have kids, all these things that feel like external pressure, as long as you have your internal system dialed in, you get to choose how you play the game. And there tends to be a lot of connection and harmony and alignment when you do it this way.
I'm glad you're talking about this, because my next question for you, and then you proceeded, was going to be, when we start introducing this idea that productivity isn't always the answer. It's not about doing more, it's about being integrous and like whole. There is a fear that comes online of, oh, if I stop working so hard and start feeling more, then XYZ, I'm going to be perceived as whatever they think they're going to be perceived as, which in your explanation, getting rid of the performance aspect addresses. But then there are also fears that sometimes come up of, oh, if I'm not spending so much time supporting the job or the mission because I'm working on what's coming up in my heart in order to get them in balance. But there is this balancing phase, there is sometimes a fear that they're not going to be able to pay for stuff, or they're not going to be able to support the life that they've developed. And, sometimes for clients, I'm like, that just is part of the recalibration phase sometimes. Like sometimes there is a loss of some things while you're coming back into integrity. But I'm curious how you support that fear that comes up in the space in between, or in that transition phase sometimes.
Through the process of eliminating, as humans, going through this performance cycle, coming up through this, society's constructs and all the things that can start to put pressure and turn you into somebody that you didn't want to become. All of those things are their weight that a man carries. So making a simple but not easy choice to start dropping off weight is one of the the lowest hanging fruit. What are you carrying through your life that it's like, imagine having a big rope connected to a backpack that it's just full of stuff and you're just dragging it around with you your entire life. And you just keep putting stuff in the backpack and the backpack's getting heavier and you just keep making a choice, wake up, grab this rope, drag it along. Well, one of the simplest choices we can make is, first of all, you can open your hands and let go of the rope, right? Or if you choose that, there's a few things in that backpack that are valuable. You can walk back to the backpack, take some things out of it that are no longer valuable, and then you can drag a lighter backpack, right? Or you can actually put the backpack on because it's light enough. So that eliminating a lot of things helps. The way I help men do this in a little more tactical way is what I call the 5 pillars of personal power. And the 5 pillars of personal power, the first one is strong self, right? And strong self is has 3 components to it: forever fitness, nourishing nutrition, mindset mastery. We know as men that is the very first place that we have to start, and that's where we finish. So everything else is in between those, all right? So you got your strong self. You got real relationships. Real relationships involves your intimate relationship, family relationships, friend relationships. And spending time in those areas and understanding how to create harmony in them is where a lot of this work happens, okay? So real relationships. The other one, the third one, worthwhile work. Are you doing work that you love, right? So you have your current work. You may not love it, but it's there. So current work is one of the components. Then you have your dream work, which is the work that you know you're being called to. You can feel it right here, but you're having a struggle getting there. And then you have what's called the bridge work. The bridge work is the work it takes to get from the current to the dream. Okay. And then the fourth one is amazing adventure. More men than I can count through my history of coaching just don't adventure anymore. And it is one of the strongest things that a man can do in order to come back, especially if he has a spouse, in order to come back and be stronger than ever for his spouse. He must get out and adventure, connect with other men, do crazy things sometimes, nothing that's unethical or unmoral, but things like that just scare him a little bit. Get to the edge of the cliff, climb the mountain, jump off the thing, ride the motorcycle, whatever. There's got to be some kind of adventure in a man's life. It could be fitness competitions, whatever it is. So amazing adventure. That involves your happy hobbies, local adventure, travel adventure. And then the fifth pillar is financial flexibility. You can choose how rich you want to be in money, but to have a level of financial flexibility matters. Most men's stress come from the way finances rest in their life. And so if you have plenty to support the things that are the most important in your life, all of a sudden, all these other areas, you get to relax a little bit more. You don't have to perform as much anymore, right? Because you can just be who you are. It helps. So the financial flexibility helps. And that is sacred savings and deciding how you're going to consciously contribute. How can you give back? So when you have those 5 pillars in place, you know where to apply your energy every day. These are the 5 things that matter. Everything outside of that, or everything that doesn't add value to that, you get to say no to. And that's a very powerful thing.
Yeah. Yeah, like when men start making these changes and they surrender the script and start writing their own story and feeling into their heart, it can be, like Jessica said, it can feel like a little bit of a free fall. But one thing that men love is a framework, a system, some principles, which you have. It's like whenever a man feels like they would fall, it's like, hey, I've got this principle for you. This is why you feel unsupported, because you haven't colored in everything that is necessary for you to feel like there is a path below you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mm.
And there is a lot up against men, right? There's a lot of pressure to perform, to provide, to fit into a model of what they were taught a man needs to be. But what would you say is the biggest challenge that's facing men today?
The biggest challenge facing men undoubtedly is consumption. Consumption. And when I say consumption, I'm talking about three key things: food, information, and other people's energy. The consumption of these three things in the amount that is happening right now is the greatest downfall of men in this modern day. And so if we can regain control in those three areas: food, how much of it do you really need? And the quality, like how high quality can you get it to be? So those are two powerful questions. How much of this food do I really need? And what is the highest quality I can get? That changes your nutrition right away. Okay. Yes, it's deeper. There's more nuance to it, but just ask those two questions. When it comes to information, here's a powerful question: is this relevant to the mission I'm on? And if you say yes, that it is, that's fine. The next question is, how much of this do I really need before I can just take action? Because a lot of watching another YouTube video, again, maybe it's relevant to your mission, but do you need another YouTube video? Scrolling through Instagram one more time, listening to the news again. There's just so much, and it becomes this cycle of consumption of information. And then you're overwhelmed at the end of the day. You just want to sit back on the couch and let it all go, and maybe numb out a little bit with some alcohol or drugs or whatever it may be. And then other people's energy. Man, I see men get stuck so much thinking that they just have to spend time with certain people, either because they're family, because they've been friends for a long time, or because, they work together. We always have a choice on how we operate and to set bold boundaries for what's the most important to us. And if there are people in our lives that do not add value, and that you don't feel the energy to add value back to them, it's okay to spend less time with those people. I'm not encouraging anybody to cut anybody out. Sometimes that needs to happen, but this is all about managing how much time you spend with people who may be taking energy away from you, and being real honest about that. So food, information, other people's energy. The consumption is what is the biggest downfall of men in this modern day.
Yeah, this way that you describe this, it goes really well with what you're talking about with removing stuff from your backpack. Like they're actually in Earth, maybe not in space, but in Earth, we are space and time limited in some
Mhm.
ways. And things can't really come in if the backpack is like over full. Like you want more nourishing relationships, you want a work that gives you purpose and satisfaction, but all of your time is going to porn or Instagram or YouTube or overeating or whatever it's going to. There just simply isn't the space to create the life you're desiring. And sometimes, I talk about how your life is just a math equation. Like it really is as simple as that. This plus this equals this. Sometimes there's things we're not seeing. So it can be hard. It can be a harder
Mhm.
problem to solve for some people. But if you haven't worked with the consumption problem yet and you haven't identified how you want to spend time nourishing these 5 areas of life that you mentioned, like that is quite a simple way to put it for people to really be honest with themselves, take this responsibility that you're talking about of like, oh, I say that I want financial and relational success, but 3 hours of my day every single day is going to this place that isn't supporting any of those things. It can be challenging to build community or to find the partner that you want to be with, but it's really hard to do that if you're not leaving your house. There's like a
Right.
little bit of differences in the way that you are saying that you want something versus devoting your life to actually creating it. So I love the simplicity of this. And as I'm talking, this is a little bit of a topic switch, but um I know that a lot of the things that men seek is this like intimate partnership. And a lot of times it's the thing that they sort of like blame their unhappiness on. Like, if only I had a partner and wasn't single, or if only that person didn't break up with me, or if only my wife would XYZ, however they want to project it onto that orientation of partnership, it often goes there. And taking responsibility for life is one way to create different relationships and more desirable relationships. But the reason I'd love to talk to you about intimate partnership is because something that really struck me in our initial call and whenever you speak is just like when you say, "Oh, my queen," it's not just like the word. Like, people will use that word on Instagram sometimes, but there's like a big energy that like ripples out from you when you talk about the woman that you're with. And I don't know if I have a specific question about this, but I'd love to hear whatever you want to share about like developing
Hmm.
partnership that is solid and sacred and lasts, because I can hear just in your voice that you have some codes.
Yeah, I love that you bring this up. So me and my queen, her name is Anna, by the way. So we have been together 11 years today. So I'm on this podcast, well, on the
Congratulations.
day we're shooting
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
Happy
Thank you.
anniversary.
Thank you. Thank you. And so she came into the relationship with 2 kids. I came in with 2 kids. And, um, we've her youngest was 11 at the time that we got together. So when I came in to her life, I had to figure out how to be stepdad, because both of my kids were grown and out of the house. And so stepped back into a dad role, and that was a big decision. And what I figured out was conscious communication is the biggest tool for longevity in any relationship, but definitely in an intimate relationship. So I got to work really figuring out, like, how do I consciously communicate in a way that is a way of leadership, uh, also expresses empathy, uh, also has bold boundaries, um, and also just keeps things as light as they can be. And so one of the codes that we came up with together is most shit doesn't matter. And when I say that, it's this idea that I don't care how she does the dishes or where she places the dishes in the dishwasher. I don't care like how she organizes her makeup and what the side of her closet looks like. That's not my business. I don't care about that. Right now, my 18-year-old self would have maybe looked at the closet and been like, can you like organize your stuff a little bit better and put it over? That's where problems come in, because why am I trying, like, her personality put that closet together the way it is. And now I'm saying that's not good enough. You see? So this is where these little micro adjustments or micro words that men use that can feel like, hey, I was just letting her know. Well, it goes a lot deeper than that. What you're letting her know has roots. And if you don't know how to communicate with the roots, then it's best not to say anything. So that's the code, conscious communication. And then there's also things we put in place. Like, no matter how long we've been together, we date each other. And I do my best every morning. This is part of my identity, and part of what I write in the mornings is I do my best to tap into, man, look at this woman that I'm seeing for the first time. And I want to treat her like that. Like when I see her, I want to date her, or re-engage her that way. And there's something very powerful about a man being a leader in a way that isn't an authority over her. And that takes work. In my first relationship, in my first marriage, I was married for 14 years and that didn't work out. I got divorced. I was an authority. I was trying to be an authority because I heard a man's supposed to be a leader. I heard a man's supposed to do this and this and this. And I'm like, well, that sounds like authority. Let me be that. And that doesn't work out very long because that leads a woman to feeling unsafe, to feeling not nurtured, not taken care of. And so after I got the divorce, I spent 4 years doing deep work on myself and creating a situation where I said, the next relationship I get into, I'm going to be whole so that there is nothing for me to try to transform in the woman I'm going to be with. She can be all of who she is. And so that's a key piece. If you're a man listening to this, if there's any piece of you that doesn't feel whole, get to work on those pieces because it changes everything. Because what I identified was a lot of the arguments and things that happened in my past relationships were pieces of me that weren't taken care of. Right? They didn't have anything to do with the other person. They are sure they have their work to do, but that's their responsibility. There were pieces of me that needed to be taken care of so that I could communicate, so I could show up a certain way. And so this comes back to that radical responsibility. Yeah, I guess. So the main code, most shit doesn't matter. And that applies to a lot of stuff. And just keep the communication open and also learn when it's time to be quiet. That's okay too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What you said about in your first marriage wanting to be the authority because that's what you had learned that men were supposed to do. I think that's one of the biggest issues that we have in our culture, in our society, in our government as a whole. And it's created a picture of masculinity that many people label toxic, that men are
Oh,
authoritative, domineering, controlling. It's my way or the highway. And I agree with you that all of that stuff comes from insecurity. It comes from approving. It comes from you can't see these parts of me that I don't want to look at either. And you mentioned this healing journey that you went on for 4 years afterwards, and beginning that journey is really hard. Like it's not that most guys do this intentionally. They just don't know that they've suppressed these parts so far that they're now operating outside of their control. They're operating behind the
yeah.
curtain where they're actually more powerful, where they're actually leading you to yell at your wife or whatever it is. So kind of what was the trailhead for you besides the pain and the heartbreak of the divorce that allows you to actually see these pieces that had been stuffed so deep?
Oh. There was this moment after getting the divorce that I felt darkness come over me. And the darkness it was wrapped up in questions like, did I try everything I could? Am I still a good father? Am I a good man? What are my parents going to think? What are my clients going to think when I let them know that I got this divorce? Because I hid it the entire time. And so through these questions, there was this cycle of this doom that I felt. And it went on for about, I would say 3-4 months. And it led to this moment where I was sitting on the edge of my bed one day and I asked myself the question, what would it be like if I wasn't living anymore? And so there was this hopelessness. This is what hopelessness is. Okay. And so I'm home by myself, dark house. I had some destructive patterns for a few weeks. So it led to this night of me sitting on the edge of my bed, and I reached over in my nightstand and I grabbed my pistol that was in there and I set it right next to me, just so it would be closer in case I made the decision. And I was sitting there going through my thoughts, and I reached down with my right hand and put my hand on the pistol. And then all of a sudden, there was like this light that opened up, and there was this word. The word just started floating down out of the sky, down through my head, and it landed in my heart. And the word was gratitude. And as I'm going through this is where spirit led became very, very vivid to me. As I'm going through this, I had 2 daughters at the time. I could see their eyes looking at me. They weren't physically there in the house with me. I could see in this vision that I'm going through. And I was like, okay, I see it. I see it. The suspension of my own ego and pride in the situation is going to be really important if I want to figure out what it's like to actually be the man that I know I'm being called to be. And so that moment over 15 years ago led to the beginning of the depth that I operate in today, right? The roots that are in the ground today. And I'm thankful for it. I wouldn't change it, and I want to share it as much as possible because I know there's plenty of men who go through these dark times where the hopelessness feels real. It feels very real at the time, and the chaos is real. And it's nice to be able to have someone through a conversation like this who maybe can just lift your head out of the chaos just a little bit and say, hey, look at this. Look at this thing that you haven't been able to see because you've been buried under the weight of all the stuff. And maybe just that moment, or, in that case, these words, maybe these words are what one man listening to this podcast needs. That you have options. You can start to create your own system and slowly start to align your life with the things that you know you want.
Thank you for sharing your story. And I just want to create some space for those words. Like anyone listening to this, you have options and you can align your actions to the life that you want. And the life that you are living is like it's like you had things to be grateful for then. That's the vision of your daughters, and um just the awareness of like um the ability that you had to, okay, I can choose to suspend this feeling that I have to create something differently. Even the awareness of sovereignty in a moment like that is huge. um and then also because of that choice, you stayed, you're still here,
Still here.
you have connection with your daughters, you have connection with your stepkids, and you're beautiful. And also you're impacting lives all the time, and I'm sure there's a bunch of other beautiful things about your life that I don't know or that we haven't gotten the chance to talk about
That's
yet.
true.
But those moments, if we so choose, we talk about that when there's an initiation offered, you have to choose to take it. When there's a door offered to
Must.
walk through, you get to choose which door to walk through. And because you chose life, and not only life, but a life where you were devoted to creating something new, you have it. And I think that's a really important thing to share when stories like this are shared. Is it wasn't just, oh yeah, I didn't actually shoot the gun. It's because I didn't do that, I get to experience life so much more. You get to experience life so much more. And anyone who chooses that same route of taking the initiation to reclaim responsibility for their life and create something different also gets to have something more, not because you're special or because when I didn't follow through on stuff like that, I'm special, but just because that's how life works. When you choose to reclaim
Hey,
sovereignty and when you choose life every day, then you get to have a life over which you're sovereign. Um, Just
No
that
doubt.
math equation that we were talking about.
No doubt. No doubt. And the math, and like you're saying, like the math is simple. The the work is where the challenge is. And so anybody listening to this, I just want them to understand. Well, I think I can speak for both of us. We're not minimizing the fact that real things are happening in your life.
Yeah.
We're just encouraging that through it all, there is a choice, and at some point, change happens when we choose to take the choice. And so that's what we're encouraging here.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard stories like you too many times of having a hand on the gun, of having the rope around the tree branch. For me, it was the freeway turning and me thinking I could just not turn my steering wheel and
Mhm.
launch my car off the side of the freeway, right? And sometimes that's the choice that men make. But whenever I've heard those stories from men who have had the grace to make the other decision, I always respond with awe because those guys are always doing great things in their lives, for their families, because, for anybody that's there is a future where you're not there, but you can't get there remaining the same man who got there. It requires
Yeah,
change. And so
sure.
that moment where you feel like you're reduced to absolutely nothing, like you can get out of it. And sometimes it takes picking up the phone when the phone feels like the heaviest thing in the world. It feels like putting down the bottle of a substance when it feels like that's the only thing that's got your back. It's a really hard thing to do, but I hope that we can share more and more of these stories to broadcast that there is another future.
We-
So, I have a sort of interesting question for you, I think. But since you are working with different men at these different phases of life, and you just talked about like a really pivotal moment in yours, a lot of what we do, and definitely like what I go really intensely into with different people is like inner child work.
yeah.
And I was wondering if you would be willing to share with us what you would share with a younger version of you who maybe like thought he was the man, and also what you would share with a younger version of you who thought nothing of himself. And if you could
Ooh.
maybe describe those parts so we have a little picture.
Good.
Okay. What would I share with the version of me, the younger version of me who thought he was the man? Huh. I like real talk. So I would tell that young man, first of all, slow down.
Mm.
Slow down. That's number one. Because my younger self was moving fast. Um, to be real about it, there's a world out here that's going to eat you up
Mm.
if you choose to continue operating this way. And while you think you're the man, you're going to run up against something pretty soon that's going to show you that you're not. And that thing you're going to run up against is going to be necessary. So my prayer would be that you have people around you who will let you take that fall without it killing you, because that's going to be the point where you're going to change the most. Now, it doesn't have to get to the point, and this is still me talking to him. It doesn't have to get to the point where it's called a rock bottom or you're in the pit. You can make a choice right now to recognize the direction of your actions and use the wisdom of those who's come before you to start to course correct. The choice is yours. So that would be my conversation with my younger self. Said that thought he was the man.
Yeah,
Um, and then what was the
beautiful.
other one? The man who was
Um,
hopeless.
yeah, the version that was hopeless or just feeling really insecure, or whichever version of you feel called to, but connect with them, and then yeah, same thing.
Mm. Yeah, to my younger version that had experienced just enough life to feel hopeless uh, and distracted, what I would tell you is life is about the daily war. And war means win against resistance. And if you can't be a man that understands that there is a very healthy and peaceful daily war that you must engage with, then you will suffer forever.
Sure.
And the reason I say this is because the hardships that you're going through right now are necessary. They're pregnant with lessons that you need in this moment. So as hard as it may be, if you can start to just pull lesson number 1 and start to take a small amount of action on it, you will start to gain momentum toward this man that you know you're being called to be. If you choose to continue circulating through these defeating thoughts, that's a choice. And it's important for you to understand that you are making that choice. Just be conscious about it. So you can choose to tap into this new energy of small action, which I call reps, or you can stay in the chaos and consciously make choices that don't serve your life. My biggest encouragement for you is to understand, though, that there is no victim. There's a man making choices, and you get to be that man.
You're speaking to me right now, and what's given me life is, when it feels hopeless, when it feels like nothing is happening the way that you want according to your preferences, that instead of telling yourself stories about why it's so hard, get on your hands and knees and start looking for the lessons. And even if, the money's not coming in, the results aren't happening, the relationship isn't coming in for you, if you can learn what that period is teaching you, you're being provided for. I'm being provided for, right? It's, it would be, kind of a red alert to be hopeless and not be aware of any lessons. Now that would feel like despair,
Mhm.
and yeah, I think that's really powerful that, what you want might not be coming, but the lessons you need are.
Yeah.
Close.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have 2 questions that we ask at the end of every podcast.
Okay.
The first is just a little bit of homework for the listeners to do. Part of our
Mm,
mission is like, we don't want this to just be some more information that people consume and do nothing with. We
love it.
want it to be something that if the men listen to this podcast and do everything from it, they could actually live a different life just from this podcast alone.
Mm.
So, with that being said, if you were going to give the men listening one thing to focus on or do, what would that be?
Every man has a start to his day. Whether you work overnight and you sleep all day and you wake up at 6 p.m., that's the start to your day, or you just have whatever a normal schedule would be. The start to your day is crucial. And so I want you to create what's called a mastery morning. And a mastery morning does 3 things. It gets you 3 quick wins. You get a physical win, you get a mental win, you get a spiritual win. So a physical win could be something like doing some mobility work or going for a morning walk or getting your actual full workout in. Some kind of physical win. Your mental win could be some writing that you do, or gently engaging with some kind of a book that is relevant to your mission, 5 or 10 pages or 5 or 10 minutes. Nothing big, just enough to get a mental win. And then a spiritual win could be maybe you writing in your journal or you saying your prayer that matters to you. Either way, the mission is to get your mastery morning, physical win, mental win, spiritual win, before you ever have contact with another human. Now, for some of you, you have a schedule that allows you to have a mastery morning that might be 2.5, 3 hours long. I am in a position right now where I get to lengthen out my mastery morning as long as I want to, so I take my time with it. A lot of you may be in a place where you only have 10 or 15 minutes, and that is fine. What I encourage you to do is write out 2 versions of your mastery morning. Your ideal mastery morning, which would be your longer version for when you have time for that, and then your express mastery morning for those times where you don't have as much time, but your non-negotiable is to get this mastery morning in. And when you do this, it's a tool that you now put in your toolbox. And no matter where you might go in the world or what you're going through, that mastery morning is there with you. And that start to your day is the start of that identity of who do I choose to be today? Without it, you're probably going to do what most men are doing right now, which is existing through another day and then waiting to get to the end of it to numb it out. And you're too good for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for this. I want to add a little something just from the female voice on this, because for men who are in partnership, or really, I mean, the same thing occurs with women as well, but when people are in partnership, sometimes starting a morning practice before you connect with anyone is there's an excuse about the partnership, or it's hard to do because we're like cuddling in the morning and I don't want to get out of bed or XYZ.
Yeah.
And this can be something that you do not with your partner, but with them. Like both of you can start doing this. Like we say good morning and then we don't talk until we're done with our morning practice.
Sure.
And sometimes it's
Beautiful.
20 minutes and sometimes it's a couple hours,
Beautiful.
And for people who are maybe in a partnership where, the other person isn't on board to do it, you can still do it. And specifically from the masculine lens, it is one way to start embodying and connecting with this masculine energy to create the boundary that this is actually how I'm starting my day, no matter what. I love you so much, and I must do this for myself, for us. And so, yeah,
And
just
that's that
honoring
conscious
that.
communication.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So you get it. You get it. That's exactly it. And one of the things we have to, let me change my language. One of the things I'm going to invite men to do is be very conscious about the language you use. And so like you were saying, oh, I can't do that because of this. Just cut that language out altogether, all across your life, because there is always a solution. Every piece of resistance that we experience in life has a solution connected to it. And we only earn the right to source that solution when we stop long enough to say, how can I be responsible for this? And these simple things, again, not easy. These simple things change lives in a matter of seconds because you're just choosing to be this.
Yeah. To your point, it's like as a man is changing his lifestyle, the woman in his life can challenge that a bit and be the temptress that says, "Let's just stay in bed. It's warm here." Right? And the woman who really wants that isn't your woman. But the woman who's just testing you to see if you're strong enough to hold your spine, that's to make you stronger, right? And so it
Sure.
probably will take a conscious conversation to say, hey, these are the changes that I'm making in my life. This is why it's important to me. This is why I feel like it's important to us. And it would mean a lot to me if you supported me in that. And yeah, on
Love it.
Sundays, yeah, we can roll around on the sheets a little bit, right?
Of
So it's like,
course.
takes the conversation. And if she's open and in that conversation, then like, you got a shot. And I also want to speak again to the importance of the ideal morning and the express morning. I call it a ceiling and a floor because men can be so black and white and they want to do the best thing, right? And then when they
Yes.
can't have that ideal morning, they're just like, fuck it. I'm not
Yeah.
going to do
Nothing.
any of that. My
Yeah.
whole day is shot.
Yeah.
right? And it's like most mornings I can spend the time that I want, but if we've got a flight at 6 a.m., I might take 3 breaths, give some gratitude to God, and get my bags, you know? But it's like I did that. I continued to make an investment in the promises that I've made to myself and the commitments that I've made, and keeping those over time without missing is incredibly life giving. It builds confidence, and the best way to do that is to have a floor, is to have an express that you know,
Yeah.
no matter what's going on in your life, you can still do it.
Yes. I love that you brought that up because the only way to stop breaking promises to ourselves is to have versions of things and to have that's how you build in grace. Right? There's no grace without that. If I say, "Oh, I only work out for 2 hours every day." Bro, like that's great and everything, but that's not realistic, right? Or my mastery morning is 3 hours every morning. I got to get all these things done. I do this for 20 minutes. I do this. Just stop. Just stop with that because what happens is there's this moment where you break a promise to yourself. And then, like you said, all of a sudden it's like, well, the hell with it. I'm just not going to do anything. And that turns into years of not doing the thing and then coming back and being like, all right, I just want to get back to where I was. So, yeah, I agree with everything you said.
Yeah. Yeah, loosen the grip, but stay in the pocket. Stay in the
Stay in it.
pocket. Um, our last question for you.
All right.
Part of our mission with this podcast is to get rid of that story of where are all the good men, right?
Mm.
And so we always ask our guests about other men that support you or that you look up to or have learned from, who our audience can Google or read their book or look at their programs, or that we can even have on the podcast. So who comes to mind when you think of those men?
Oh, the first guy that comes to mind is my friend Stephanos. Stephanos Sifandos. Do y'all know Steph?
It's so funny. Our last guest, we put out the episode last Sunday, and as he was leaving, he was like, "I gotta connect you with Steph. They're actually neighbors." So you're the second guest in a row to bring up
Oh wow.
Stefano.
Yeah, he's been a great friend of mine for about 6 years. We're now business partners, and he's just an excellent man. He has a story to tell. He wrote a book called "Tuned In and Turned On," and talks a lot about the relationship side of life. And so I just feel it'd be valuable because he's had so much experience in his own life and through those that he's coached over the last 2 decades. Um, and he poured a lot of it into that book, but him sharing what he can on your podcast would be valuable.
Wonderful. Um, awesome, Donovan. I've loved this conversation personally for me, what I'm navigating right now, and I know the audience is going to get a ton out of it too. So we appreciate you so much. And where can people find you and learn more?
Um, Thank you guys. I appreciate it so much. And it's real simple to find me. Lifeisreps.com. Um, there's nothing for sale there. I have a newsletter that you can jump on called The Daily War. And it's not a daily newsletter. It's just the understanding that we are going through a daily war and it can be peaceful, but it is necessary. And what we talk about in that newsletter is creating connected power in your mind, your money, your muscle, your mastery, your masculinity. And I reveal some of the systems through the newsletter. So lifeisreps.com. And I really appreciate you two for having me on. And I appreciate the work that you're doing and the real conversations that you're willing to have so that the next man listening to this can uh, be a little more elevated in the way that he lives.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Donovan.
Thank you.
Thank you.